Welcome to another episode of Morning Market Call. I'm your host, Dave Wood. We're at the NAC Council tonight. With me today is another one of our distinguished guests, Tagg Romney, managing partner with Solamere Capital, which is a fund of funds. We're very glad to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Sure. I understand you spent some time with the Dodgers. You've been a lot of different places, right?
I have. I've been the Los Angeles Dodgers. I've worked in politics, worked in private equity, done a couple fun things.
Okay, great. Well, I understand that you have a particularly interesting story following your graduation, a particular ethical dilemma. I know a lot of us are in ethics classes right now. I'd love to hear what happened and what you did.
You know, it was my first day on the job. I was working for Monitor Consulting Group, and I just graduated from BYU a few months earlier. And
as an undergrad?
As an undergrad,
okay.
Economics. And there was a day where they assigned all of us our cases, our first cases, where we're going to go out and spend the next 6 months to 12 months of our life working full-time on these cases. And I was the last person to be called in, and the partner who was assigning the cases said, "You've been assigned to one of our best clients. They essentially help manage state lotteries." And as a member of the church, that was troublesome to me, and I went back to my office, and I didn't know what to do, because I couldn't say no. It was my first day in the job, and yet I didn't want to feel like my talents were being used to further interest in gambling, essentially.
Right.
And so I called my wife, I talked to some other LDS people at the firm, and I really didn't come up with a good answer what I should do. And I ended up going back. I was so nervous. I went back to his office and I said, "You know, Bill, I can't take the case." And I explained my reasons for it, and I said...
that must have been really hard.
It was. I was convinced they were going to fire me. I really was convinced that this was my first and last day on the job.
But at least you could put, on your resume, I worked there for, 2 days.
I worked for a day, yes. And so, he looked at me and he said, "Tagg, you should have told me earlier. That's not a problem. We'll reassign you." Now, they put me on a case that no one wanted to be on, because that was all that was left. And I, ended up having to work on that for the next 6 months.
But after that, everyone knew you.
Everyone knew. All the partners. The story went around. All the partners knew that, and they knew how nervous I was to go in and turn it down. And as a result, I think my career there was enhanced, because everyone knew who I was. Everyone knew that I was willing to put my personal code of ethics ahead of my career, and that was something that they respected and I think helped me.
It was a good badge to wear after that. Well, that's fantastic. So we've got a lot of MBA students out there. We have a lot of undergrad students who are watching. We're curious, what are some advice you have for new grads?
I have had a lot of jobs since I graduated. I graduated business school in 1998, so 12 years ago. I've worked at 6 different companies in that time, and I wish someone had told me early on, pick a lane and stay with it, and that would have been very helpful to me. Most of my classmates who have been successful financially and in their careers have found a lane and gotten very good at that one thing and become experts in that. And across a wide spectrum of industries, whether it's private equity or logistics or whatever it is, they become very, very good at that one thing.
Pick a lane and stick with it. Sound like Michael Phelps.
A little bit, yeah. And I've been lucky, and things have worked out for me. But I feel like a lot of it has been luck.
Okay.
And so I wish I had realized earlier on, get really, really good at one thing and stay with that one thing.
So obviously you've been on the campaign trail also with your dad, Mitt Romney, and it was a very polarizing election. You ran into a lot of religious discrimination, I might say. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you deal with that?
Well, being a member of the church has got, as always, pros and cons to it. We know obviously what the major pros are, right. But there's certainly times in the workplace or other times when it becomes a handicap for you, and that's the nature of having faith, is that you're willing to go through and live your life in a way where maybe some people don't give you the benefit of the doubt, and maybe you feel discriminated against, not necessarily in the campaign, but in a work setting.
Sure.
And that's just part of having to be true to your faith, and that's. For me, I found a lot of actually happiness when those times arise.
Yeah.
I feel like, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and if there's opposition, that's a good sign. That means that I'm doing something right.
That's great. So pick a lane and stick with it, and also drive on.
Yeah, whatever. If there's opposition, just fight through it.
Great. Tagg, thank you very much for being with
Thanks
us today.
For having me on.
It's a pleasure to have one of our honored guests with us. Tagg Romney with, what was it again?
Solamere Capital.
Solamere Capital. Glad to have you. And this has been another episode of Morning Market Call. Join us next time.
Morning Market Call is brought to you by the Marriott School of Management in cooperation with the Brigham Young University Department of Communications. MMC is made possible by generous donations from Larry Tasjan and Gary Williams. This show was produced by Jeff Butler, JANESSA CLOWARD, David Wood, and Doug Mumford, with line producing by Beth Grimmett. For more information, please follow us on Twitter and Facebook.